I'm going to start just by saying about theories. There are many theories of grief. There's a lot written on grief. And as we talked about, there is not so much written about ecological grief. The whole theory is in development right now. And we talked at the beginning, that means it's disenfranchised grief, which means there's not set ways to express it. If someone dies, we know what to do. But with ecological grief, it's different. It's development. And I've talked about why I'm really interested, why I was drawn to it. I've been looking at this for about 3 years now. I am a therapist, so I've done grief work, but I also have an environmental background, so it was kind of a natural coming together. I've done a lot of grief work. Of course, I've had many griefs in my personal life. I've also done a lot of pet loss and bereavement counseling for years now, which is working with what we call the more than human. So it's not only humans, but more than humans. I've also been doing ecological grief in the support group with client work, individual clients. One of the theories which I find really interesting right now is called the dual process theory, dual being two. It simply means that when we're in this theory and in ecological grief, what I'm seeing is that there's active grieving. There's also rebuilding one's life. And we're kind of mixing the two. There's a balance. Some people are saying, I'm not feeling it so much right now. I'm rebuilding my life. This is normal and it's healthy. I'm not saying the grieving is never going to go away for sure. I'm not sure about that. I suspect it won't. And there'll be times that come and go a little bit. But these are the two active processes that we're involved with. I had thought when I started working about this 3 years ago, because I'm also an activist, that I thought, we can kind of grieve at the same time and maybe bypass it a little bit and just get into the activism. But I was totally missing the whole point that grief is necessary. Because when we allow ourselves to enter into grieving, it changes us. And the grief is terribly, terribly important. Another part of this is that when we have a loss or someone dies in our family, we need to rebuild a new world. Things change. For example, if your partner dies, you would have operated on the assumption that they would be there every night to say goodnight, probably, or maybe call you if they were away. That changes. That assumption has to change. So when we're looking at ecological grief, we need to change our assumptions. One of the assumptions, which I'm seeing, which a lot of people are changing, is the assumption that there's something wrong with me because I feel ecological grief and others don't. Or I don't want people to know that I'm feeling ecological grief. I don't know what they'll think of me. So that's the assumption I think a lot of people have been operating on. And I think the assumption that we can change is now, I am not the only one grieving. I love creation, and that's a good thing. That's a very different way of approaching the world. Moving from, I'm not quite sure that what's going on is good here, to, yes, it's good I'm grieving. The world and creation is worth grieving for. That's what I've seen in this group, people talking about, but also what I've seen with individual clients. So some basics about grief. We hear grief takes the time it takes. It does. People are different. There are some similarities and commonalities, and this is really important, but everybody is different. So if somebody says, this is what I'm going through, this is what they're going through. That's good. Grief is a part of life. I know that most of us would prefer that it's not be part of life and that we could avoid it completely. It doesn't work that way. It's a valuable part of life because it can transform us. Grief hurts. It's physical and it's mental. It hurts. And self-care is essential. And you need support, so look for it. It will show up. Now, another really interesting part of ecological grief, which I'm really thinking about a lot right now, is that when we grieve or we lose something, we reflect on what we're losing. But with ecological grief, once we start grieving it and getting into the process, we're gaining a lot. We realize more and more that we are a part of creation rather than being a part. We are part of creation. It's a little bit like coming home. We realize this is our role in creation and we are grieving because of what's happening, but it's a part of it. So how you deal with that, that is what is the next step really. What's your role in this new world we're creating? What feelings do you have? We've talked about that before, one of them being anger. A lot of people have anger. So what does it mean that you grieve? It means that you love. It's natural and a healthy process, and it shows you what you love. We say this in pet loss and bereavement counseling, is that people are sometimes shocked at how much they grieve that pet they've lost that they love. And why wouldn't they? For some reason, we think that that's not healthy. Well, that's part of it. Same thing with grieving the world. We love the world. Why wouldn't we grieve it? Nothing is wrong with grief, but you don't want to get stuck. Now, what stuck is being stuck is different, and it sometimes people know that feeling. What is being stuck? You know, I'm thinking I'm stuck. I'm not moving forward. I can't do anything. In that case, it's sometimes really useful to get some help with that. I think this group has been useful for a lot of people because you see some people came for a little while and then left. They took what they needed and that was all they needed at the time. But being stuck is something you want to watch for. Grief does not mean that you get over anything. It means you move through grief. We are not expecting anyone who's grieving to stop loving what they loved before, but change is necessary. So with ecological grief, it means living and seeing the world in a very different way. It means taking your place in creation. It means seeing how things, seeing life in a very different way. And what you're going to do with that, I don't know. Some people are clear. I think it's a new path for many of us. It gets easier to deal with this in a way because it becomes clear what you're doing. Maybe you'll do the same thing for the rest of your life. Maybe you'll be an activist. Maybe you'll do the scientific work for them. Maybe you'll do all sorts of things. Maybe it will change. We don't know that. But the point is that everyone has their own path. I do believe that when we're going through this type of grief, it is better if you're with like-minded people. We all have friends and family who have no idea what we're thinking or talking about in this area. They just don't. They may at some point. We hope they do. But it is easier for you if you have people like this group where you are talking to people who understand. And this is really important. That's what we found with the development of the community of the Den. That people feel safe, it helps them to be brave, and people understand. So it helps you to deal with ecological grief when you realize and are reminded that you are not alone. And I see more and more people that are feeling this all the time. And again, I'm going to stress that it's healthy. And when you look at what you gain in terms of actually seeing creation and your role of creation, that's a wonderful thing. So just for most of you know, but if you don't, remember that the Den is open to you. It's a network. It's open to anybody. We are slowing down a little bit for the summer. Thursday gatherings are going to start back in September. Some of you have been speakers. Some of you may be speakers in the future. And that we're also, but over the summer, you can look at the Facebook page, the website, the Den newsletter will be going for quite a while, I think. So you're not alone, and that's a really important part. So I think in terms of ecological grief, it's we learn more all the time. And I do find with grief, because I started off, I think when we talked 5 weeks ago, I said it's my least favorite emotion. And to be honest, I'm getting to know it more. And in terms of ecological grief, the transformative aspects that develop when you actually dive into this are Just incredible. Okay, so let's stop the recording.